The grand wrought-iron gates of the Davenport estate, once a symbol of my perfect life, now felt like the entrance to my own personal hell. Inside my husband, Julian. The man I had loved since we were college sweethearts was toasting to a future that didn't include me. His pregnant mistress, a woman young enough to be his daughter, stood beside him, her hand possessively on his arm, her eyes gleaming with triumph. They had just announced that she was moving in. And me. After 10 years of marriage, I was being thrown out, discarded like yesterday's news. Little did they know my humiliating exit was about to lead me straight into the arms of a man whose wealth and power made Julian look like a pauper, a man who would help me orchestrate the most satisfying revenge imaginable. The crystal flutes chimed a delicate, almost mocking sound that echoed the shattering of my world. I stood frozen in the doorway of our formal dining room, the polished mahogany table reflecting a scene of grotesque celebration. At the head of the table sat Julian, my husband of a decade. His charismatic smile, the one that had once made my heart flutter, was now directed at a woman whose presence in our home was a dagger to my soul. Her name was Amber, a name that sounded as sweet and cloying as the perfume she wore, and she was pregnant with his child. My hand instinctively went to my own flat stomach, a silent testament to years of failed fertility treatments, of whispered hopes and crushing disappointments. Each negative test had been a small death, a private grief we were supposed to share. Now I saw the cruel irony. The family I had so desperately wanted to build with him was being handed to another woman on a silver platter. "Olivia, darling, you're just standing there." Julian's voice, smooth as aged whiskey, broke through my daze. He beckoned me forward, a gesture of feigned inclusivity that was more insulting than outright dismissal. "Come join the celebration. We have wonderful news." I forced my feet to move each step, a monumental effort. The plush Persian rug, a wedding gift from my late grandmother, felt like it was swallowing me whole. As I approached the table, Amber's eyes, a cold, calculating blue, met mine. There was no remorse in them, only a triumphant glint that seemed to say, "I've won." She was everything I wasn't. Young, barely 23, with a mane of platinum blonde hair that cascaded over her shoulders, and a body that was all youthful curves, even with the slight swell of her pregnancy. I, at 35, suddenly felt ancient, my classic elegance no match for her blatant, almost aggressive sensuality. Amber and I have decided, Julian began, his hand resting possessively on her shoulder, that it's best for the baby if she moves in here. With us. The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. With us. As if we were one big, happy, twisted family. I looked at him, searching for any flicker of the man I had married, the man who had vowed to love and cherish me, in sickness and in health, for richer or for poorer. But the man before me was a stranger, his eyes hard, his expression unyielding. "You can't be serious," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Oh, but I am, darling," he said. The endearment a venomous dart. "Amber needs to be taken care of. Stress is bad for the baby. And this house is more than big enough for all of us. Big enough." The sprawling 10-bedroom mansion, nestled in the heart of Bel Air, had once been my sanctuary, a place filled with light and laughter. Now it felt like a gilded cage, and a new, more favored bird was being brought in to sing. Amber, emboldened by Julian's support, finally spoke, her voice dripping with faux concern. "Olivia, I know this must be a shock, but I want us to be friends. For the baby's sake." Friends. She wanted to be friends. The audacity of it was breathtaking. I wanted to scream, to rage, to claw at her perfectly made-up face. But I was an Ashford before I was a Davenport, and Ashfords were taught to maintain their composure even when their world was imploding. So I did the only thing I could. I laughed. It was a hollow, bitter sound that startled both of them. Friends. I repeated the word, tasting like poison on my tongue. You sleep with my husband, get pregnant with his child, and you want to be my friend. You have a very strange definition of friendship, Amber. Julian's face darkened. That's enough, Olivia. Don't make a scene. A scene. My voice rose, cracking under the strain. You're moving your pregnant mistress into our home, and you're telling me not to make a scene. What did you expect, Julian? That I would just roll over and accept this? That I would play happy families with the woman who has destroyed our marriage? Our marriage was over long before, Amber. He shot back his words, a cruel and calculated blow. Don't pretend otherwise. We were just going through the motions. At least Amber has given me something real, something to look forward to. Something real. The words echoed in my ears, drowning out the sound of my own frantic heartbeat. Our 10 years together, the life we had built, the love I thought we shared. Was it all just a performance, a mere prelude to the main event? The fight that followed was ugly, a torrent of accusations and recriminations that laid bare the rotting foundation of our marriage. He called me cold, infertile, more interested in my charity work than in being a wife. I called him a liar, a cheat, a coward, the beautiful, fragile things that adorned our home. The Murano glass vases and the porcelain figurines seemed to tremble in the face of our fury. Finally, exhausted and emotionally raw, I retreated to our bedroom, the one sanctuary I thought I had left. But even that had been violated. On the bed, laid out as if for a queen, were Amber's things. Designer clothes, expensive lingerie, a collection of romance novels. She hadn't just invaded my home. She had invaded my life, my intimacy, my very identity. That night, I slept in one of the guest rooms, the cold, impersonal space, a reflection of my new reality. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, the silence of the house a stark contrast to the storm raging within me. I thought about my parents who had adored Julian, who had been so proud of the life I had built. How could I tell them that it had all been a lie? The next morning, the humiliation continued. Julian announced that Amber would be taking over the master suite, as it was larger and had better light, which he claimed was good for the baby. My protests were met with a dismissive wave of his hand. Don't be so dramatic, Olivia. It's just a room. But it wasn't just a room. It was our room. It was where we had whispered our secrets, where we had made love, where we had dreamed of a future that now lay in ashes. To have her in that bed in that space was the ultimate desecration. The days that followed were a living nightmare. Amber paraded around the house in my silk robes, her laughter echoing in the halls that had once been filled with my own. She rearranged the furniture, replaced my favorite paintings with her own garish choices, and instructed the staff to cater to her every whim. I became a ghost in my own home, a silent, invisible witness to the dismantling of my life. Julian, completely besotted with Amber and the impending arrival of his heir, was blind to my pain. He treated me with a chilling indifference, as if I were a piece of furniture he no longer had any use for. The man I had loved was gone, replaced by this cold, cruel stranger. The final brutal blow came a week later. I was in the library seeking refuge amongst the familiar scent of old books and leather. When Julian walked in, his face set in a grim, determined expression. "Olivia." "We need to talk," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. I looked up at him, my heart a leaden weight in my chest. I knew what was coming. "This isn't working," he said, stating the obvious. "Amber is feeling stressed. Your presence in the house is making her uncomfortable. Her comfort, as if mine was of no consequence. So what are you suggesting, Julian?" I asked, my voice devoid of emotion. "That I lock myself in my room and only come out for meals?" "No," he said. And for a moment, a flicker of hope ignited within me. But his next words extinguished it completely. "I think it's best if you leave." I stared at him, unable to comprehend the sheer cruelty of his words. "Leave? This is my home, Julian. I have nowhere else to go. You can go to a hotel. I'll have my assistant book you a suite at the Four Seasons. I'll even cover the cost for a while." He was kicking me out. After 10 years of marriage, of building a life together, he was casting me aside like a piece of trash, and he was doing it with the same casual indifference as if he were firing a disobedient employee. "You can't do this," I whispered, tears finally blurring my vision. "We're married. Half of this is mine." A cruel smirk played on his lips. "Actually, darling, you might want to have your lawyer look at the prenuptial agreement you signed. You'll find that this house and everything in it is in my name. You're entitled to a settlement, of course, but it's a pittance compared to what I'm worth. You walked into this marriage with nothing, Olivia, and it seems you'll be leaving with not much more. The prenup. I had signed it without a second thought, so blinded by love and trust that I had never considered the possibility of a future without him. I had believed in his promises in our forever, and now that same piece of paper was being used as a weapon to dispossess me, to erase me from the life I had helped build. He turned to leave his dismissal absolute. But before he could walk out the door, I found my voice, a voice I hadn't realized I still possessed. "You will regret this, Julian." I said my words low and filled with a chilling certainty. "You will regret the day you ever crossed me." He paused, a flicker of something, annoyance, surprise, crossing his face. But then he laughed, a short, sharp, dismissive sound. "I doubt that very much, Olivia. I have everything I've ever wanted. A beautiful woman who adores me, a son on the way. What do you have?" "Nothing." And with that, he was gone, leaving me alone in the silent, cavernous library, with nothing but the echoes of his cruel words and the shattered fragments of my heart. In that moment, as the tears finally fell hot and bitter, a new feeling began to take root in the desolate landscape of my soul, a burning, all-consuming desire for revenge. Julian was right. I had nothing, and that meant I had nothing left to lose. The sterile, impersonal luxury of the Four Seasons suite felt more like a prison than a refuge. For 3 days I moved through the opulent rooms like a phantom, the breathtaking views of the city skyline a stark contrast to the bleakness of my inner world. I ordered room service I didn't eat, watched movies I didn't see, and cried until I had no tears left. Julian's words echoed in my mind, a cruel, incessant mantra. "You have nothing." He had been swift and brutal in his execution. The day after he had thrown me out, a courier had arrived with a check the settlement amount stipulated in the prenup. It was a substantial sum to the average person, but to a man of Julian's immense wealth, it was less than a rounding error. It was a final insulting reminder of how little I had meant to him. My friends, the society wives I had once considered my confidants, were suddenly distant and evasive. News of my spectacular fall from grace had spread like wildfire through the elite circles of Los Angeles. I was no longer Mrs. Julian Davenport, the poised and elegant hostess of the most sought-after parties. I was now a cautionary tale, a woman discarded for a younger, more fertile model. Their sympathy was laced with a palpable fear. If it could happen to me, it could happen to any of them. On the fourth day, I knew I had to do something, anything, to break free from the suffocating grip of despair. I couldn't let Julian win, not completely. I had to fight back. But how my lawyer, a man who had been recommended by Julian's own firm, had confirmed the ironclad nature of the prenup. Legally, my options were limited. I decided to start with something small, a reclamation of my own identity. I needed a job, a purpose, something to pour my energy into besides my own misery. Before I married Julian, I had a promising career in art curation. I had a passion for it, a keen eye for talent. But Julian had discouraged it, preferring me to focus on my duties as his wife. I spent the morning polishing my long-neglected resume, the words on the page a reminder of a woman I had almost forgotten. The woman who had been ambitious, independent, and full of life. It was a small act, but it was a start. That afternoon, needing a change of scenery, I wandered into a small, independent art gallery in a trendy downtown district. The stark white walls and the minimalist aesthetic were a world away from the opulent clutter of my former life. I was admiring a striking abstract piece, a chaotic swirl of blues and blacks that seemed to mirror my own inner turmoil, when a voice beside me said, "It's called The Tempest." Quite fitting, isn't it? I turned to see a man standing beside me. He was tall, with a lean athletic build that was evident even in his impeccably tailored suit. His hair was a distinguished salt and pepper, and his eyes, a startling shade of green, were crinkled at the corners, as if he smiled often. There was an aura of quiet confidence about him, a stillness that was both calming and intriguing. "It is I," replied my voice, a little hoarse from disuse. "It feels raw." "That's what I love about it," he said, his gaze returning to the painting. "It's unapologetically emotional. No pretense." He then turned his full attention to me, his green eyes holding mine. "I'm Sebastian Blackwood." The name was instantly familiar. Sebastian Blackwood was a titan of the tech industry, a self-made billionaire known for his shrewd business acumen and his even more impressive philanthropic endeavors. He was a legend in a city full of them, a man who moved in circles, far more rarefied than even Julian's. He was also notoriously private, rarely seen at the glitzy social events that had once been my life. "Olivia," I said, omitting my now hated married name. "Just Olivia." "Just Olivia," he repeated, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. "Well, just Olivia. You have excellent taste. This is one of my favorite pieces." "You're the owner of the gallery?" I asked, surprised. "One of them," he said with a self-deprecating shrug. "It's a passion project, a way to support emerging artists who don't fit the traditional mold." We fell into an easy conversation about art, about the piece before us, about the burgeoning LA art scene. It was the first real conversation I had had in days, the first time I had felt like a person rather than a problem. Sebastian was intelligent, insightful, and refreshingly down-to-earth for a man of his stature. He listened to my opinions with genuine interest, his gaze never leaving my face. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen. As we were talking, my phone buzzed with a notification from a gossip website, the headline a fresh stab to my already wounded heart. Billionaire Julian Davenport and pregnant girlfriend Amber Rose cuddle up at Nobu. The accompanying photo showed Julian cradling Amber's stomach, a blissful smile on his face. I must have flinched because Sebastian's expression immediately softened with concern. "Are you all right?" The carefully constructed dam of my composure broke. To my own horror, my eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry," I stammered, turning away mortified. I have to go." "Wait," he said, his voice gentle but firm. He placed a light hand on my arm, the touch sending a surprising jolt of warmth through me. "You don't have to tell me what's wrong, but you look like you could use a friend, or at the very least, a decent cup of coffee." Something in his kind, non-judgmental eyes made me hesitate. I was so used to the prying, pitying looks of my former friends that his simple offer of companionship felt like a lifeline. We went to a quiet cafe next door, and over 2 cappuccinos, the story of my humiliation and heartbreak came pouring out of me. I told him everything: the years of infertility, the discovery of the affair, the cruel and calculated way Julian had thrown me out. I expected him to be shocked, perhaps even a little repulsed by the raw, messy drama of it all. But Sebastian just listened, his expression unreadable, his green eyes never leaving mine. He didn't interrupt. He didn't offer platitudes or empty words of comfort. He just held the space for me, allowing me to finally voice the full extent of my pain and betrayal. When I had finished, my voice hoarse and my cheeks stained with tears, he was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "Julian Davenport is a fool." It was so simple, so direct, that it took me by surprise. There was no pity in his voice, only a quiet, firm conviction. He had a diamond. Sebastian continued, his gaze intense, and he threw it away for a piece of glass. His words were a balm to my bruised and battered ego. He wasn't just being kind. He seemed to genuinely believe it. "But he has all the power," I said, the familiar feeling of hopelessness creeping back in. "He has the money, the lawyers, the connections. He told me I have nothing." Sebastian leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "He's wrong, Olivia. You have a weapon. He can't possibly anticipate me." I stared at him confused. "What do you mean?" A slow, dangerous smile spread across his face, a smile that hinted at a ruthless, formidable power that lay beneath his calm exterior. "I know Julian Davenport. We've crossed paths in the business world. He's arrogant, overconfident, and he underestimates his opponents, especially a woman he believes he has already crushed." He paused, letting his words sink in. He built his empire on a foundation of carefully constructed lies and ruthless acquisitions, and I know where all the bodies are buried. A thrill, a dangerous and exhilarating spark shot through me. It was the first flicker of hope I had felt in what seemed like an eternity. "I want to help you, Olivia." "Sebastian," said his voice, a low, compelling rumble. "Not out of pity, but because I can't stand to see a man like that win. Let me help you get not just what you are owed, but what you deserve. Let me help you take him down." The offer was as terrifying as it was tempting. It meant stepping into a world of high-stakes corporate warfare, a world I knew nothing about. It meant placing my trust in a man I had just met, a man whose motives were still a mystery to me. But as I looked into his steady, determined green eyes, I saw not a knight in shining armor, but a strategic and powerful ally. And as I thought of Julian and Amber laughing in my house, building a life on the ruins of mine, I knew I had my answer. What do I have to do? I asked, my voice no longer trembling but filled with a newfound resolve. Sebastian's smile widened. For now, you just need to trust me, and perhaps find a very, very good divorce lawyer. I happen to know the best in the business. She specializes in making arrogant men pay. As I walked out of the cafe, the late afternoon sun warming my face, I felt a shift in the very foundations of my being. I was no longer a victim. I was a woman with a purpose, a woman with a powerful, enigmatic ally by her side. The game had changed. Julian thought he had won. He had no idea that the war was just beginning. The woman Sebastian Blackwood recommended was nothing like the staid corporate lawyer who had overseen my prenup. Her name was Zara Vance, and her office was a sleek minimalist space in a downtown skyscraper that screamed power and success. Zara herself was a vision of sharp angles and even sharper intellect, with a severe black bob piercing dark eyes and a reputation for being a shark in a designer suit. So Zara said, leaning back in her chair after I had recounted my story, for the second time in as many days, Julian Davenport thinks he can just discard a 10-year marriage with a token payoff and a pat on the head. He's about to get a very rude awakening. There was no sympathy in her voice, only a cool, professional anger that I found immensely comforting. She wasn't interested in my tears. She was interested in my victory. The prenup is problematic, she conceded, tapping a perfectly manicured nail on the document I had provided. But it's not insurmountable. These agreements can be challenged, especially under circumstances of duress or if there's evidence of fraudulent concealment of assets. And with a man like Davenport, there are always hidden assets. For the first time, I felt a genuine surge of hope. Sebastian, Mr. Blackwood, said he might be able to help with that. A knowing smile touched Zara's lips. Sebastian Blackwood is a very useful man to have in your corner. He's also the one footing my rather exorbitant bill, so you can be assured of my complete and undivided attention. She leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with strategic fire. Our first step is to file for divorce, citing adultery. We'll also file a motion for discovery, demanding a full and transparent accounting of all his assets, both personal and corporate. It will be a shot across his bow. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. I moved out of the hotel and into a chic, fully furnished apartment in a luxury building all arranged and paid for by Sebastian. It was a clear message to Julian that I was no longer a damsel in distress, but a woman with powerful resources of her own. Sebastian was a constant, steadying presence. He checked in on me daily, not with intrusive questions, but with quiet offers of support. He took me to dinner at restaurants, so exclusive I had never even heard of them, introduced me to fascinating people from the worlds of art, tech, and finance, and slowly, piece by piece, helped me rebuild my shattered confidence. He was a puzzle, this man. He was kind and attentive. Yet there was a ruthless edge to him that I glimpsed in his sharp business negotiations and his incisive observations about the people around us. I found myself increasingly drawn to him, to his intelligence, his quiet strength, and the way he looked at me as if I were the most interesting woman in the world. But I was wary of my own feelings, unsure if I could ever trust my judgment in a man again. The day Zara filed the divorce papers, The reaction from Julian was swift and predictable. He called me, his voice tight with fury. "What the hell do you think you're doing, Olivia? I gave you a generous settlement. Don't push your luck." For the first time, I didn't crumble under his anger. With Zara's coaching and Sebastian's silent support, I found a new strength. The settlement was an insult, Julian. I said, my voice cool and steady. And I'm not the one who's out of luck. Adultery is a messy business. I'm sure your investors will be thrilled to read all the sordid details in the press. There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. I had never spoken to him like this before. I had always been the peacemaker, the one who smoothed over his rough edges and placated his temper. "You wouldn't dare," he finally sputtered, but the threat sounded hollow even to my own ears. "Try me," I said, and hung up. The first strike had been launched, and it had hit its mark. A week later, Sebastian invited me to a charity gala, a major event on the LA social calendar. "It's time to reintroduce yourself to the world," he said, his green eyes twinkling. "On your own terms." I was hesitant at first. The thought of facing the same people who had whispered about my downfall was daunting. But Sebastian was persuasive. "You have nothing to be ashamed of, Olivia. Walk into that room with your head held high. Let them see that you are not just surviving. You are thriving." He sent a team of stylists to my apartment, who outfitted me in a stunning emerald green gown that seemed to set my skin aglow. When Sebastian arrived to pick me up, looking impossibly handsome in a classic tuxedo, he stopped dead in his tracks, his eyes widening in genuine appreciation. "You look breathtaking," he said, his voice a low, husky whisper. As we walked into the grand ballroom of the Beverly Hilton, a hush fell over the crowd. Heads turned, and whispers erupted like a sudden brush fire. I saw them all. My former friends, Julian's business associates, the society mavens who had written me off. But this time their stares were not filled with pity, but with a mixture of shock, confusion, and grudging admiration. And then I saw him. Julian was standing by the bar, a glass of champagne in his hand, with Amber clinging to his arm. Her baby bump was more pronounced now, and she wore a garish pink dress that was far too tight. They both stared at me, their expressions a perfect portrait of disbelief. Sebastian, sensing my momentary hesitation, placed a steadying hand on the small of my back. "Don't look at them," he murmured in my ear, his breath warm against my skin. "Look at me." I turned to him, and in his calm, reassuring gaze, I found my anchor. We moved through the room with an easy grace, greeting people Sebastian knew his presence, a shield that deflected the curious stares and malicious whispers. Eventually, Julian, his face a mask of thunderous fury, strode towards us, dragging a pouting Amber behind him. "Blackwood," he said, his voice a low growl. "I should have known you were behind this." Sebastian smiled, a cool, unbothered expression on his face. "Davenport, good to see you. I don't believe you've met my date for the evening." He turned to me, his hand still resting possessively on my back. "Olivia, I'm sure you remember Julian." The sheer audacity of the introduction, as if Julian and I were casual acquaintances, was a stroke of genius. It completely wrong-footed Julian, who was clearly expecting a tearful, dramatic confrontation. "What is the meaning of this, Olivia?" he demanded, his eyes darting between me and Sebastian. "What are you doing with him?" Before I could answer, Amber stepped forward, her voice high and shrill. "Yes, Olivia, what are you doing?" "Are you trying to make Julian jealous?" "Because it won't work. He's with me now. We're having a baby." I looked at her, at this young, foolish girl who thought she had won the grand prize, and for the first time I felt not anger, but a profound sense of pity. "Amber." I said, my voice calm and measured. "This has nothing to do with you. This is between me and Julian." I then turned my attention to my estranged husband, my gaze as cold and hard as steel. "As for what I'm doing, Julian, I'm simply moving on with my life. You should try it sometime. Oh, and by the way, I added delivering the line Zara had prepared for me. My lawyer will be in touch with yours. We'll be needing access to the corporate servers for a full forensic accounting. I hope your books are in order." Julian's face went pale. The mention of a forensic accounting was a direct hit, a clear indication that we knew he was hiding something. He opened his mouth to retort, but no sound came out. He looked for the first time since I had known him completely and utterly cornered. Sebastian, ever the master of timing, chose that moment to steer me away. "I believe they're serving the first course," he said smoothly, leaving Julian and Amber standing there speechless and fuming. As we walked towards our table, a sense of exhilaration washed over me. The fear, the shame, the humiliation that had clung to me for weeks finally began to dissipate, replaced by a thrilling sense of empowerment. "You were magnificent," Sebastian murmured as he pulled out my chair. "I had a good coach," I replied, my eyes meeting his across the table. In that moment, under the glittering chandeliers of the ballroom, surrounded by the powerful and the beautiful, I knew that my old life was well and truly over. A new one was just beginning, a life I would forge on my own terms. And as I looked at the enigmatic, powerful man who had made it all possible, I realized that my heart, which I thought had been shattered beyond repair, was slowly, tentatively beginning to heal. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, I believed I could win. The weeks that followed were an education in the intricate architecture of deceit. The forensic accounting process, orchestrated by Sebastian's formidable team and spearheaded by Zara Vance, was not a simple review of ledgers. It was a deep, methodical excavation of a decade of financial lies. I found myself in Zara's sleek, intimidating office several times a week, sitting before screens filled with spreadsheets and flowcharts that traced the serpentine path of Julian's greed. At first, the information was a bewildering alphabet soup of corporate jargon. Special-purpose entities, offshore holding companies in the Cayman Islands, and Panama inflated asset valuations and fictitious invoices. But Sebastian, in quiet evening sessions at my apartment, would patiently translate it all. With a pen and a notepad, he would sketch out the complex structures, revealing the rot beneath the gilded facade of the Davenport Corporation. "Think of it like this," he explained one night, his green eyes focused and intense as he drew a series of interconnected boxes. "This is the public company, the one everyone sees. It looks solid, profitable. But Julian has been using its resources to secure enormous loans. Instead of reinvesting that capital into the business, he's been funneling it out through these. He tapped a box labeled JD Global Ventures Limited, a shell company that exists only on paper. From there, the money is laundered through a dozen other entities, making it almost untraceable, and finally lands in private accounts that bear no connection to his name. I stared at the diagram, a sickening knot tightening in my stomach. It wasn't just a matter of hiding a few $1 million. It was a breathtakingly audacious scheme, a house of cards built on a foundation of pure fraud. The life I had lived, the charities I had funded with his generosity, the lavish parties we had thrown, it was all financed by a grand illusion. He was gambling with everything I murmured, tracing the lines with my finger. If any of this came to light, the entire structure would collapse. Sebastian finished his expression grim. He's not just cheating you, Olivia. He's defrauding his investors, his business partners, and the federal government. What Zara has uncovered isn't just leverage for a divorce settlement. It's a criminal indictment waiting to happen. The scale of it left me breathless. My personal betrayal, as deep and painful as it was, felt like a single drop of poison in a vast, toxic ocean. This realization solidified my resolve. This was no longer just about a broken heart. It was about exposing a predator. Armed with a mountain of irrefutable evidence, Zara Vance went on the offensive. She scheduled a meeting with Julian's legal team, a high-powered firm known for its aggressive tactics. As Zara later recounted to me with a glint of savage satisfaction in her eyes, their initial arrogance and blustering threats quickly dissolved into beads of sweat and panicked whispered consultations as she laid out the proof page by damning page. They had come prepared for a messy divorce. They were now facing the complete annihilation of their client. The response was swift and desperate. A courier looking pale and nervous delivered a thick portfolio to my apartment. Inside was a new settlement proposal. The figure offered was astronomical, a sum that would place me firmly in the ranks of the ultra-wealthy. It was life-altering money, a golden ticket to a future free of any financial concern. But it came as I knew it would, with a price. Buried in the dense legalese was a multi-page ironclad non-disclosure agreement. It would gag me for life, forbidding me from ever speaking about Julian, his business dealings, or the true reasons for our divorce, under penalty of forfeiting the entire sum and facing further legal action. It was a golden cage. That night I sat with Sebastian on the balcony of my apartment, the city lights twinkling below like a carpet of scattered diamonds. I held the proposal in my hands, the sheer weight of the paper feeling symbolic. "He's trying to buy my silence," I said, my voice quiet. "He wants to erase his crimes, pay me off and walk away." Sebastian looked from the document to my face, his expression thoughtful. He didn't tell me what to do. He simply asked the question that mattered. "The offer guarantees you a life of comfort and security. You would never have to worry about money again. You could disappear, start fresh, and leave all of this behind you. No one would blame you for taking it." He paused, his gaze holding mine. "But there's another path. The path of justice is harder. It's public, it's ugly, and it offers no guarantees, except the truth. So the question is, Olivia, what do you truly want? Comfort or justice?" I thought of the years of lies. I thought of his cold dismissal of me. The smug triumph in Amber's eyes, the casual cruelty of his words. "You have nothing," and taking his money would be an admission of that, a final acceptance of his valuation of me. Justice, on the other hand, justice was priceless. I want him to be seen for what he is. I said, a newfound clarity hardening my voice. I want the world to know the truth. I want justice. A slow, proud smile spread across Sebastian's face. "I was hoping you'd say that." We rejected the offer. The silence from Julian's side was deafening. And then he made his final, most desperate move. He appeared at my door one evening unannounced and uninvited. The change in him was shocking. The impeccably tailored suit was rumpled. His face was gaunt and shadowed with stubble, and his eyes, once so full of arrogant fire, were bloodshot and pleading. He reeked of expensive scotch and fear. "Olivia," he began, his voice hoarse, a pathetic imitation of its former confident timbre. We have to talk. I stood impassively in the doorway, blocking his entry. There's nothing left for us to talk about, Julian. You should speak to my lawyer. No, please, he begged, taking a step forward. I held my ground. Just 5 minutes. Please, Liv. The old nickname, once a term of endearment, now sounded grotesque on his lips. He launched into a rambling, pathetic monologue. He was sorry. He had been a fool. He had been under so much pressure, the stress of running the company, the desire to build a legacy for us. It was all he claimed for us. An empire for our family. I repeated, my voice dripping with ice. Is that what you told Amber when you moved her into our bed? Were you building an empire for her and your son too? Amber, he ran a trembling hand through his hair. Amber was a mistake, a symptom of my own weakness. She means nothing to me. I'll get rid of her, I swear. It's you, Olivia. It's always been you. I love you. He tried to reach for my hands, and I instinctively recoiled. The performance was nauseating. He wasn't sorry for what he did. He was sorry he got caught. He wasn't confessing his love for me. He was making a last-ditch effort to save himself. You don't love me, Julian, I said, my voice flat and devoid of the emotion he was so desperately trying to provoke. You don't even know what love is. You love your money, your reputation, and your freedom. And you're about to lose all three. You destroyed everything that was good between us. Now, you need to leave. His face, which had been a mask of pleading remorse, twisted into a snarl of pure venom as he realized his efforts were futile. The cornered animal was baring its teeth. You think you're so clever, don't you? He spat. Hiding behind your new billionaire protector. You'll regret this, Olivia. When this is all over, he'll get tired of you too. You'll end up with nothing, just like I said. You'll both regret ever crossing me. The threat was impotent, the final roar of a defeated king. I simply looked at him, a man I no longer recognized, and slowly, deliberately closed the door in his face. The solid click of the lock was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. While my world was solidifying into one of purpose and strength, Julian's was spectacularly imploding. My spies at the estate, the kindly housekeeper Maria and the loyal gardener Carlos, kept me updated. Their reports painted a picture of a gilded cage descending into a squalid hell. With his accounts frozen and his credit lines severed, the river of money that had fed Amber's extravagant lifestyle had dried up. Maria described epic shouting matches that echoed through the marble halls. Amber, finding her black Amex declined at Chanel, had thrown a priceless vase against the wall. She accused Julian of trapping her, of lying about his wealth, of ruining her life. Julian, beleaguered and cracking under the pressure, responded with vitriol, calling her a gold-digging tramp who was only interested in his money. The fairy tale romance had curdled into a vicious, toxic reality. The final act came on a Tuesday. Julian was locked away with his lawyers for a grueling 12-hour session. Amber saw her chance. According to Maria, who watched in stunned silence, Amber methodically packed her Louis Vuitton luggage, emptied the contents of the master bedroom safe, the last bastion of liquid assets, and walked out the front door without a backward glance. She left only a single sheet of paper on the pillow of my former bed. It was a note from her lawyer informing Julian that she had relocated to a secure location and that he could expect to be served with papers establishing paternity and a demand for exorbitant child support. Julian returned late that night to a dark, silent mansion, to an empty bed and an empty safe. He had lost everything: his wife, his mistress, his unborn child, and his empire. 2 days later, the bomb we had so carefully assembled finally detonated. I woke to the ping of a news alert on my phone. The headline from the Wall Street Journal was "Stark Davenport Empire Implodes Amidst Allegations of Massive Fraud." It was everywhere. The story led every major news broadcast. Financial analysts dissected the fraud on cable news using the very same charts Sebastian had drawn for me. Julian's face, pale and ashen in a paparazzi shot, was plastered across the internet. The fallout was immediate and brutal. The SEC announced a formal investigation. The board of directors publicly fired him. A flood of lawsuits from betrayed investors and partners began. He was ruined publicly and irrevocably. I watched it all unfold, not with a sense of gleeful triumph, but with a profound, quiet vindication. It was the sober closing of a painful and ugly chapter. That evening, Sebastian drove me out of the city toward the coast. We didn't speak much on the drive, the comfortable silence filled only by the soft rock on the radio. He took me to a secluded stretch of beach in Malibu, a private cove he knew. We left our shoes in the car and walked across the cool sand as the setting sun bled across the sky in stunning hues of crimson and gold. "It's over," I said, the words carried away by the sea breeze. "A chapter is over," he corrected gently, stopping to face me. The waves sighed against the shore, a timeless, soothing rhythm. "He has received his justice." "We delivered it," I said, looking up at him. My heart filled with a gratitude so immense it was difficult to articulate. "No, you delivered it. I could never have done this alone." "You saved me, Sebastian. You were never a damsel in distress, Olivia," he said, his voice soft but firm. He reached out his touch, gentle, as he tucked a wind-swept strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers lingered for a moment against my skin, sending a current of warmth through me. "You had the courage to fight when it would have been easier to surrender. I just helped you aim the cannon." The air between us shimmered with all the things left unsaid. In his eyes I saw more than just an ally. I saw admiration, affection, and a depth of feeling that mirrored the own burgeoning emotions in my heart. "Julian was a fool," Sebastian murmured, his gaze searching mine, making sure I understood his meaning. He threw away a treasure he was never worthy of. And in doing so, he led me to you. He took a small step closer, his voice dropping to a low, intimate timbre. "I once thought my life was complete. I have success, wealth. But it was all black and white. And then you walked into that art gallery, and for the first time I saw in color. And then as the last sliver of the sun dipped below the ocean's horizon, he closed the small distance between us and kissed me. It wasn't a kiss of triumphant passion or sudden lust. It was a kiss of profound tenderness, of deep recognition. It was a kiss that spoke of patience, of healing, and of a safe harbor after a long and violent storm. It was a kiss that promised not a simple fairy tale, but a complex, beautiful, and authentic beginning. In the ashes of my old life, I had found more than revenge. I had found redemption. And in the arms of this extraordinary man, I was finally, truly home. And so my story isn't just about a marriage ending. It's about a woman being reborn. It's a reminder that even when you're pushed out, left with what feels like nothing, you possess an inner strength you never knew existed. Julian thought he was closing a door on me, but he actually opened a gate to a life of genuine love, respect, and self-worth with a man like Sebastian. My journey from a heartbroken wife to a triumphant woman in her own right is a testament to the fact that sometimes hitting rock bottom is the first step to building a new, unshakable foundation. If my story has resonated with you, if it's given you a glimmer of hope or simply a moment of thrilling drama, please show your support. Like this video, share it with someone who might need to hear it, and subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories of overcoming betrayal and finding unexpected happiness. Thank you for listening. They say every marriage has its secrets, some small enough to slip under the radar, others large enough to crack the very foundations of trust. But what if the secret is discovered in the most unforgiving spotlight of all, a crowded upscale restaurant? And what if, at the exact moment, a wife learns about her husband's betrayal? She's carrying his child, unsure whether to expose him, protect him, or destroy everything in one impulsive move. This story follows the meteoric rise and catastrophic fall of Derek Harrington, a man who had it all until one dinner turned his world into a firestorm of scandal and investigation. Derek Harrington had always exuded a confidence that verged on arrogance. He was the type of man people noticed in a room, tall, well-groomed, with an intense gaze that made you think he saw your secrets before you even decided to trust him. At 37, he was already heading one of the fastest-growing private tech investment firms in the country. Harrington Ventures nestled in the heart of New York City. Many had whispered comparisons. He could be the next Elon Musk, or he's aiming to dethrone Bill Gates in philanthropic efforts. Of course, those comparisons were mostly hot air in the media, but Derek ate them up like candy and fueled his ambition further. He had grown up in a modest home in Syracuse, New York, the son of a middle school teacher and an unemployed mechanic. Derek swore to himself at a young age that he would never again know the taste of poverty and uncertainty. If there was a mountain, he would climb it. If there was a competitor, he would annihilate them, or better yet, buy them out. Ever since his first big deal, a startup buyout that netted him a cool $20 million by the age of 26, Derek became addicted to the thrill of high-stakes ventures. His wife, Catherine Harrington, was the silent strength behind him. Once Catherine Barnes, she had come from an entirely different world, an only child raised in Connecticut by a wealthy yet tight-knit family who adored her. Catherine's father, Alexander Barnes, had a small but respectable real estate firm that catered to elite clients. Catherine had an aura of class that Derek desperately needed. Although he was confident in boardrooms and pitch meetings, he often floundered in high society's intricacies. Catherine taught him how to navigate those elite circles with charm and grace. For the past 6 years, their marriage had been a blend of love, shared ambition, and occasional tension, particularly since Derek began pouring all his time into Harrington Ventures. Catherine had repeatedly asked for a child, a family. Derek always said, soon pushing it down his list of priorities. But finally, to Catherine's breathless joy, she became pregnant. Derek, for his part, seemed excited, though many nights he would return home after midnight, exhausted, complaining about client dinners or late-night strategy sessions. Still, Catherine believed in him. She believed in his vision, in his ability to provide not just for her, but for their soon-to-arrive child. Even if love had cooled into routine, she trusted Derek would protect their family. She had no idea her entire life would be thrown upside down by one small choice, deciding to meet an old friend for dinner in the heart of Manhattan. Catherine had not planned to be at the upscale restaurant Aux Merveilles that particular night. She was 8 months pregnant and feeling more fatigued than usual. But her college friend, Melanie Carter, was passing through New York for the first time in years, and insisted on seeing her. To Catherine, it felt like an unexpected gift, an escape from waiting at home alone for Derek to walk through the door at some unknown hour. Melanie had chosen Aux Merveilles because she'd read about it in a luxury travel magazine. The interior glimmered with crystal chandeliers, and each table was separated by translucent screens that glowed with soft amber light. The gentle hum of hushed conversations filled the air, occasionally interrupted by the clink of expensive dinnerware. Catherine arrived early, leaning on the hostess stand for a moment to steady herself. A sympathetic staff member immediately guided her to a plush velvet seat and offered a glass of water. She felt a bit out of place in her maternity dress, noting the swirl of elegant women in cocktail dresses and men in tailored suits. But she brushed off the discomfort. She was here to see her friend, not to impress the Manhattan elite. While waiting for Melanie, Catherine decided to freshen up in the restroom. On her way back, something caught her attention through the filmy screen of a private dining area. At first, she had no idea why her gaze lingered there. She could see a man's silhouette, tall and commanding, and across from him sat a slim figure with flowing dark hair. Catherine's heart twitched. The tilt of the man's head, the way he gestured with his hand, that was Derek's mannerism. But it couldn't be. Derek had told her he was in an urgent meeting on the other side of town. Her heart pounding. Catherine took careful steps toward the screen, making sure to stay hidden behind the plush drapery that separated the main dining area from the private alcoves. A waiter passed by, but she quickly turned away, pretending to examine a painting on the wall until he was gone. Then she returned her gaze to the table. Yes. It was Derek. He was dressed in a charcoal suit, the kind he wore for special private events. And he wasn't dining with a business associate. His companion was a woman with an air of cold, dazzling beauty. Catherine didn't recognize her immediately. Maybe she was a client. But then she noticed the way the woman's hand stretched across the table to rest on Derek's fingers, a gesture far too intimate for a business meeting. Catherine's stomach churned. She felt dizzy. She almost rushed forward to confront him, but some primal sense of caution rooted her to the spot. She wasn't prepared for a scene. She didn't know if she was strong enough to face the answers to the burning questions swirling in her mind. So she watched. Derek leaned in, and the woman did the same, her glossy black hair falling forward to frame her face. Catherine could make out the name Sabrina Chen from the conversation. They chuckled softly, and Derek brushed a strand of the woman's hair back behind her ear. Catherine's hands shook, tears threatening to flood her eyes. She pressed herself against the wall. She needed to get out of there, needed to breathe. She turned and hurried away, nearly running into a startled Melanie who was just arriving. Melanie took one look at Catherine's pale face, then glanced curiously at the private alcove. "Are you okay?" she asked, hands gripping Catherine's arms gently. "My goodness, you look like you've seen a ghost." In a strangled voice, Catherine replied, "I'm not feeling well, Mel. Can we go somewhere else?" Melanie, always sensitive, nodded without question. She guided Catherine outside, hailed a taxi, and insisted they go back to Catherine's penthouse so she could rest. Catherine murmured something about not wanting to be alone, about needing to talk. Once in the taxi, she told Melanie everything, that Derek was there with another woman, clearly more than a business associate. Her friend listened, anger flaming in her eyes. "You need to confront him," Melanie said. "He can't get away with this, especially now when you're about to have his child." But Catherine felt paralyzed. Her mind spun with a million scenarios, none of them good. She wanted the safety of denial, to pretend she didn't witness the betrayal. But she also wanted the raw truth. By the time they reached her penthouse, She had made a decision she would wait for Derek to come home. He would have to look her in the eye and explain. Night stretched on with excruciating slowness. Melanie offered to stay, but Catherine insisted she'd manage. She needed to confront her husband alone. So Melanie left with repeated promises that Catherine call her for any reason, day or night. The apartment felt cavernous once Catherine was alone. Her baby kicked inside her as if sensing her mother's distress. Sometime near midnight, Catherine dozed off on the living room couch, still in her maternity dress and heels, phone clutched in her trembling hand. She awoke to the click of the front door. Derek stepped in laptop bag over his shoulder tie, slightly loosened. He paused when he saw her lying on the couch in the dim light. "You're still awake?" he asked, crossing the room to place a kiss on her forehead. His breath smelled faintly of wine. Catherine recoiled, the sting of his betrayal fresh in her mind. She struggled to compose herself, but emotion burst forth. "Where were you?" Derek froze, obviously caught off guard by her accusatory tone. "I told you I had a meeting." "Don't lie," Catherine shouted. "I saw you, Derek. I saw you at Aux Merveilles with some woman named Sabrina Chen. You were touching her hair." She choked on the words, tears forming again. Derek's face went pale, then hardened with defiance. "You were spying on me." "Catherine, what were you doing there? Having dinner with a friend," she shot back. "But that's not the point. Don't try to twist this around. Just tell me the truth." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. "She's just a client. Nothing more. The hair thing, it was just a friendly gesture. You know how these international investors can be. They appreciate closeness, personal connections. She's considering a large investment in Harrington Ventures." Catherine stared at him, heart twisting with disbelief. "I'm not a child, Derek. I know what I saw. That was no casual client dinner." He let out a breath, lips pressed together. "Okay. We're close. But it's complicated. Sabrina has connections with major stakeholders in Asia. She expects a certain rapport. If I don't keep her happy, we could lose a multi-million-dollar deal. So you're sleeping with her to make her invest." Catherine's voice trembled with fury and despair. "It's not that simple," Derek said, but he didn't deny it. "This is business, Catherine. And it's not... it's not what you think. Yes, she's flirtatious. Maybe I crossed a line, but it's for the company, for our future." Catherine stood, a surge of anger giving her strength, even in her pregnant state. "Our future, our child's future. This is how you plan to secure it, by betraying me." Derek's eyes flickered with guilt. But then he hardened again. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Harrington Ventures is on the verge of a major breakthrough. A single large investment could catapult us into the realm of industry giants. I can't afford to let moral qualms hold me back." Catherine felt as if the floor were dropping out from beneath her. She recognized Derek's ambition had always been borderline obsessive. But hearing him admit he'd compromised their marriage, the very sanctity of their relationship just for a deal, she had no words. A wave of exhaustion crashed over her, mingled with heartbreak. "Get out," she finally managed, voice weak yet resolute. "Catherine," he started. She turned away. "Sleep in the guest room. I can't even look at you right now." He opened his mouth to argue, then thought better of it. Silent, he retreated to the guest bedroom, leaving Catherine to collapse onto the couch in tears. As she drifted in a half-conscious state of heartbreak, a single question throbbed in her mind. How could he do this to us? Sunlight spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, stirring Catherine from a fitful sleep. She sat up, her body aching from the night spent on the couch. She half expected Derek to appear with an apology or at least an explanation better than it's for the deal. But the apartment was silent. A check of the guest room revealed he was gone. No note, no text. Only the faint smell of his cologne in the hallway. Catherine felt bitterness coil inside her like a snake. Had he left for work as though nothing had happened? Trying to compose herself, she went about her morning routine, feeding their fluffy grey cat Winston, who circled her legs anxiously, making a cup of tea, gazing out at the city skyline. But none of it soothed her. Her phone buzzed with a message from Melanie. She simply texted, "I'm here for you," followed by a heart emoji. Catherine typed a quick thanks and debated what to do next. Should she confront Derek at his office? Should she call her father? Confide in him? Then as she paced through the living room, the TV caught her attention. A news ticker scrolled across the bottom, and the anchor's solemn voice filled the silence. Ongoing investigation into potential insider trading and financial misconduct at Harrington Ventures. Derek Harrington's office has not yet released a statement, but sources say officials from the SEC are looking into suspicious activity. Catherine fumbled for the remote and turned up the volume. Her heart pounded with alarm. Investigation insider trading. This was the first she'd heard of anything official. The anchor went on. Harrington Ventures soared to prominence in the last few years, drawing comparisons to major tech moguls like Elon Musk and Bill Gates. But now regulators question whether certain investment gains came from illicitly obtained information. Derek Harrington was spotted at a private dinner last night with an unidentified associate, leading to speculation on whether this meeting is connected to the alleged misconduct. In that moment, Catherine felt a strange mixture of shock and vindication. She remembered the hush of Oxmervale, the private table Derek's murmured conversation with Sabrina Chen. Was this the reason for that meeting? She grabbed her phone and scrolled through financial news sites. All of them were erupting with the story. Harrington Ventures under siege. One headline read, "Inside the SEC probe teased another." She found nothing that concretely linked Sabrina Chen to the scandal, only rumors that Derek was meeting with someone who might hold the key to hush money or secret deals. Anxiety clawed at Catherine's stomach. This was beyond a marital betrayal. It might be a legal catastrophe. She needed answers. She dialed Derek's cell, but it went straight to voicemail. Her next thought was to contact his assistant, the ever-efficient Amanda Wu, who always picked up or responded promptly. But even Amanda's phone rang until voicemail kicked in. Fearing the worst, Catherine decided to put aside her heartbreak for a moment and do what she could to protect her family. She reached for her coat and bag, then headed out the door, determined to confront Derek at his office if necessary. The offices of Harrington Ventures occupied the 20th through 22nd floors of a gleaming steel and glass tower in Midtown. When Catherine arrived, the usual bustle in the lobby was replaced by a tense hush. Small clusters of employees whispered, casting anxious glances toward a row of men in dark suits who were busy rifling through documents and laptops. It was clear the investigation was well underway. Catherine stepped off the elevator on the 22nd floor, where Derek's corner office overlooked the city. She braced herself for the sight of more investigators. Instead, she found the reception area swarming with them. She approached a stern-faced man, flipping through files. "Excuse me, I'm Catherine Harrington. I need to see my husband." He regarded her warily. "Do you have an appointment?" She almost laughed at the absurdity. "Appointment, I'm his wife. Is Derek in his office?" The man jerked his head toward a closed door. He's in a meeting with the SEC officials and his legal team. Best if you wait. Catherine felt her patience slip. I'm not waiting, she said firmly. Without another glance, she marched to Derek's office door and turned the handle. Locked. She knocked, ignoring the mutterings of the investigators behind her. After an agonizing minute, the door swung open, revealing Derek's lawyer. A slim woman in a sharp navy suit, a phone pressed to her ear. She looked Catherine up and down. Mrs. Harrington. We're in the middle of something. Derek's voice cut through. Let her in. The lawyer stepped aside, and Catherine entered the office. Derek stood at his desk, arms folded, face drawn and tired. Two men in dark suits sat in chairs across from him, notes scattered on the table. They regarded Catherine neutrally before turning back to Derek. We'll give you a moment, one of the men said, as they gathered up their documents and stepped out. An awkward hush fell. Catherine closed the door behind them. For a heartbeat, she and Derek just stared at each other, the memory of last night's argument hanging between them. His eyes flickered with guilt concern, and something else, maybe relief. Catherine. He began running a hand over his face. I was going to call you once this settled. Her anger reignited at his dismissive tone. Settled, Derek. You're under investigation by the SEC. This isn't a small pothole in the road. The news is everywhere. He sighed. Look, I can't say much right now. It's an internal matter, and our lawyers say we should cooperate, but keep quiet publicly. There have been rumors of insider trading, but it's a misunderstanding. We're sorting it out. A misunderstanding, Catherine repeated. Does this have anything to do with Sabrina Chen and last night's dinner? Derek flinched at the name. Why would you think? Because the news outlets are already speculating about it. Derek, she hissed. If you were with her to discuss some insider deal. Stop, he cut in, raising a hand. I can't talk about her. Not here, not now. Let's just say I have things under control. Catherine couldn't believe what she was hearing. Under control? Derek, the entire office is crawling with investigators. I can't even reach your assistant. Amanda was told not to talk to anyone without the lawyers present, Derek said tightly. She's in a conference room with them now. This is standard procedure. Standard procedure, Catherine echoed, her voice faint with incredulity. How far does this go, Derek? Because if you think I'm going to sit at home pregnant while you're possibly facing criminal charges, I didn't do anything illegal, he snapped, though sweat beaded at his temple. Sabrina, it's complicated. She brought me some stock tips about a company we were considering investing in. She claimed she had reliable leads. You used them. Catherine pressed her heart, pounding. He swallowed. Not exactly. I just moved some assets around. I didn't know it would be considered insider information. She told me it was her own research, that it was legit. I never expected the SEC to come knocking. Catherine's mind reeled. So he had used Sabrina's tips, likely crossing a line into illegal territory. She stared at him, struggling to reconcile the charismatic man she fell in love with, the father of her unborn child, with this desperate figure in front of her. Finally, she said, What do you want from me? Derek. He looked pained. I need you to trust me. I'm meeting with Sabrina this afternoon to clarify things. She owes me an explanation. If she fed me illegal tips, it's on her. My lawyers can argue that I was deceived. Catherine's breath caught. You're meeting her again. After last night. It's business, he insisted. Look, I get how bad this looks, but if you want to protect our family, you'll let me handle this. I promise I'll fix it. Part of Catherine wanted to cling to the hope that he could, but she saw the desperation in his eyes, the guilt and confusion swirling there. His ambition, once so inspiring, had turned into a reckless obsession that might cost him everything. Maybe she should walk away, call her father, pack a bag and leave. But she couldn't, at least not yet. She carried his child, and some piece of her still loved him. She nodded once. Fine. But I'm not leaving you alone in this. I'm staying in the city. I'll do what I can to help. Derek exhaled relief passing over his face. He reached for her hands, but she stepped back. I'll trust you for now, she said, voice trembling. But remember, Derek, trust isn't infinite. You've already broken it once. That afternoon, Catherine found herself restless, pacing the penthouse. The SEC had allowed Derek to remain at the office, but insisted he provide any requested documents on demand. His phone was undoubtedly monitored, and Sabrina Chen was labeled a person of interest. Catherine tried to focus on calm. She set up a quiet corner to rest, turned on soft classical music, and attempted to soothe the baby within her. Yet every time she shut her eyes, she saw Derek leaning across that table. Saw him gently touching Sabrina's hair. How did we get here? She wondered. Have I been so naive? A phone call from an unfamiliar number broke her reverie. She picked up, heart hammering. A woman's voice spoke clipped and professional. Hello, Mrs. Harrington. My name is Caroline Patterson. I'm a journalist at the New York Daily Mirror. We're working on a story about your husband's company. Would you be willing to provide a statement? Catherine's mouth went dry. No comment, she said hastily, ending the call. But within minutes, another call came from yet another journalist. And then another. It seemed the entire press corps had decided to ring her up in search of a sensational quote. She turned off her phone, trembling with anxiety. The day crawled by. When Derek finally returned home, it was well past 8. Catherine opened the door to find him grim-faced, tie, undone hair disheveled. He looked like a man fighting a war on multiple fronts. Any progress? Catherine asked quietly. He nodded. Lawyers say there's no direct evidence yet. Just allegations that we traded on insider info for a few deals. But they'll keep digging. As for Sabrina... He paused, looking away. We spoke. She claims she's just a scapegoat. She said she's taking a flight back to Hong Kong tomorrow, and that the SEC can't touch her there. Catherine's stomach twisted. So she's running. He shrugged. Or, so she says. I tried to get her to talk to my lawyers, but she refused. She's not answering calls anymore. My attorneys are furious. They say if she disappears, it'll make me look even worse, like we're trying to hide something. Catherine eyed him. Are you still sleeping with her? Derek's cheeks burned red. No. Catherine, I messed up. Okay. I let things get too close, but it was never serious. Not on my end. She wanted to believe him, but suspicion dug its claws into her mind. Is that the truth, or just what you need me to believe? He hesitated. I'm not lying to you. Look, I promise you my relationship with Sabrina was purely for business connections. Maybe it crossed lines, but I never intended to leave you. Or... She shook her head, tears threatening again. How noble, she whispered sarcastically. Derek, I can't keep doing this. I can't watch you destroy yourself and our marriage in this pursuit of power. He reached for her, his hand trembling. For the first time she sensed he was truly afraid. "Catherine, if we can get past this, I'll change. I'll make it right. Just stand by me, please." Looking into his eyes, she saw remnants of the man she'd married, the one who had once had dreams of giving them a beautiful life. Hesitantly, she placed her hand on his cheek. He closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. They stayed like that for a moment, broken but together. By the next morning, Catherine felt an urgent need for counsel. She made a phone call to someone she knew and trusted her father, Alexander Barnes. Despite their somewhat strained relationship, he had never fully approved of Derek's rags to riches aggression. Her father was a steady presence in her life. "Dad," she said quietly when he picked up. "Things are bad. Derek's company is under investigation. There's rumors of insider trading." She heard him exhale. "I saw the news. Are you all right?" "I don't know," she confessed. "He might have been unfaithful too. I feel like everything is spiraling." Her father's voice softened. "Sweetheart, you need to take care of yourself. Think about my grandchild. Stress can't be good for the baby." She stifled a sob. "I know. Dad, what should I do? Should I leave him?" Alexander was silent for a moment. "I can't decide that for you. But listen, Catherine Derek has always been a risk-taker. That's what made him successful. But it can also lead to ruin if he isn't careful. You have to consider if you can trust him to change. And if not..." She closed her eyes. "I understand." He cleared his throat. "If you need a place to stay, come home. Your old room is waiting, or I can set you up in a nearby property. No pressure. But I won't let you face this alone." Tears welled in her eyes, but she felt a measure of warmth. "Thank you, Dad. I'll let you know." After the call ended, Catherine sat by the window, watching the Manhattan skyline shimmer under the morning sun. Memories danced in her mind. Meeting Derek at a charity gala, her father hosted the spark in his eyes as he talked about turning dreams into reality, the sweet way he'd slipped a note into her coat pocket with an invitation for a first date. Where had that man gone? Meanwhile, Derek's day took a dramatic turn. He was set to appear for a voluntary discussion at the SEC offices downtown. His lawyers insisted that showing openness would help. But an hour before he was supposed to leave, a text from an unknown number arrived. "Meet me at the Park Regency Hotel room, T02. Urgent. Sabrina." His heart pounded. Why would Sabrina risk contacting him now, especially if she was supposedly leaving the country? He showed the text to his head lawyer, Edward Langley, who frowned. "That's ill-advised. She's already under suspicion." Derek frowned. "But if she has evidence to exonerate me or some angle we can use, it could save the company." Langley shook his head. "We can't stop you from going, but this is dangerous. If the SEC finds out, they might interpret it as conspiracy. You should consider letting me or one of the associates go with you." But Derek shook his head. "She might not talk if there's a lawyer present. I'll go alone, but I'll record everything." Langley frowned more deeply. "Just be careful. And whatever you do, don't offer her money or anything that can be interpreted as bribery." Derek nodded grimly. He texted Sabrina back. "I'll be there in 30 minutes. Then he instructed his driver to head to the Park Regency. Anxiety prickled his skin as he imagined the worst. A sting operation, a setup by the SEC, or even blackmail from Sabrina herself. When he arrived at room 1902, he found the door slightly ajar. He knocked softly, hearing the faint sound of classical music from inside. Sabrina's voice called out, "Come in." He stepped into the suite, scanning the opulent living area. Marble floors, plush sofas, fresh roses on the coffee table. Sabrina stood by a window wearing a sleek black dress. She looked impeccable every inch, the mysterious femme fatale. Her gaze locked on Derek. "Don't be shy," she said with a purr. "We don't have much time." Derek hesitated by the door. "Why did you call me here?" She beckoned him over. As he stepped forward, she gestured for him to sit on the sofa. He remained standing. "I'm not staying long." "Talk." Sabrina smiled, though tension radiated off her. "I'm leaving for Hong Kong in a few hours. I just wanted to mend things between us." "I never meant for you to get in trouble." He shook his head, anger flaring. "You handed me illegal tips. That's exactly how I got in trouble." She narrowed her eyes. "Don't pretend you didn't know the risks, Derek. You're a smart man. No one invests millions blindly. You could have done your own diligence, but you were too eager." He opened his mouth to retort, but she continued. "Anyway, let's not argue about the past. I have a proposition. I can provide documentation that proves I misled you, that I told you it was my own research, and you relied on it in good faith. If the SEC sees that you could walk away with little more than a slap on the wrist." Derek's heart skipped. "So you'll confess to lying?" She shrugged, a coy smile on her lips. "I'll say whatever you need me to say, for the right price." He clenched his jaw. "What price?" She sauntered to a small table and picked up a folder. "I have it all here, emails, transcripts. It's quite convincing. I want $5 million. Derek nearly choked. $5 million? Sabrina. That's blackmail. Her lips curled. Call it compensation. I'll be ostracized from my circles. I can't do business with you or your connections again. I'll have to rebuild from scratch. Derek's mind spun. $5 million was no small amount, but his company was worth hundreds of millions. If the investigation destroyed it, he could lose everything. Still, even if paying Sabrina might clear him, it was absolutely illegal to bribe a witness. This could bury him deeper in legal trouble. He took a step back, shaking his head. I can't do that. My lawyers would kill me. She rolled her eyes. Your lawyers, Derek. You won't need them if you're indicted. You'll be lucky to avoid jail. He stared at her, fury boiling. So this was your plan all along? To reel me in, feed me these tips and then blackmail me? Sabrina's eyes flashed. Don't be naive. You pursued me for my connections. We used each other. Now let's finish the transaction. He exhaled, attempting to steady himself. I won't pay you a cent. If you have evidence that can help me, provide it. If not, get out of my way. Her expression hardened. Think carefully, Derek. You have a lot to lose. He turned to the door. I'm done with you. As he left, his heart pounded not just with anger, but with fear. Fear that Sabrina might release evidence that would incriminate him further, or worse, twist the facts to frame him entirely. The upcoming meeting at the SEC loomed large in his mind. Back at the Harrington Ventures office, Derek quickly informed Langley of what had transpired. The lawyer's face turned pale. She asked for money. Derek, if we even hint at paying her, it could be seen as witness tampering. We have to disclose this to the SEC, or they might discover it later, and accuse us of hiding it." Derek groaned. "You're right. Let's get it over with." The two hurried to the SEC building where they were ushered into a conference room. Catherine, who'd insisted on coming along for moral support, sat quietly in the corner. She offered Derek a small nod of encouragement. Despite everything, she was there for him. The lead investigator, a meticulous woman named Francesca Morales, greeted them with cool politeness. "Mr. Harrington, we appreciate your cooperation. We have a few questions." Langley gave a tight smile. "We want to go on record that Ms. Sabrina Chen attempted to solicit money in exchange for certain statements. We did not comply." Morales leaned forward, interest piqued. "That's quite an allegation. Do you have proof?" Derek remembered that he had switched on his phone's recording as soon as Sabrina started talking. He glanced at Langley, who nodded. They handed over the audio file. It was risky, but they had no choice. If Sabrina tried to sell a false narrative, at least they had evidence she'd demanded money. Morales listened with headphones, her stern face revealing little reaction. Finally, she removed the headphones. "We'll need to verify the authenticity of this recording. For now, it appears Ms. Chen may have engaged in blackmail." She then fixed Derek with a penetrating gaze. "But that doesn't absolve you, Mr. Harrington. Regardless of Ms. Chen's motives, if you used insider information knowingly or not, you remain accountable." Derek swallowed. "I understand." The interrogation began, and it felt like a slow, agonizing dance. Morales asked about each investment, each conversation with Sabrina, each trade made in the weeks prior. Derek tried to remain calm, giving honest answers, but stopping whenever Langley advised him to. At times, Catherine interjected small clarifications, like how Derek spent nights working on legitimate research, how he had never shown awareness of wrongdoing. Morales took notes meticulously. Finally, after hours, they were dismissed. Langley told them it might take weeks for the SEC to decide whether to press charges, but at least they hadn't been arrested. Catherine managed a small sigh of relief, but Derek's expression was still grim. "This is far from over," he muttered. News of the SEC meeting spread quickly through financial circles. Rumors persisted that Sabrina Chen had fled the country. The press speculated wildly. Did the pregnant wife know secret mistress at center of scandal billionaire, playboy, or savvy businessman? Each headline more lurid than the last. Investors began pulling out. Harrington Ventures' stock, though private, was partially linked to a public affiliate, and its share price dropped precipitously in after-hours trading. Derek scrambled to reassure stakeholders. He wrote emails, made phone calls, pleaded for patience. Some listened, others distanced themselves. The board of directors called an emergency meeting to discuss damage control. Catherine watched the meltdown with growing horror. She wanted to stand by Derek, but each day more revelations emerged about how close he and Sabrina had been. Photos surfaced of them at charity galas, at private dinners, looking more intimate than Derek had admitted. The press ran with the story, painting a picture of a torrid affair. Catherine felt herself roiling with a mix of jealousy, betrayal, and lingering love. One night, Derek returned home, late, throwing his keys on the kitchen counter in frustration. "We lost another investor. The board is furious." Catherine, who had been restless all evening, approached him tentatively. "You need a strong public statement," she suggested. "Something that clarifies everything from the insider trading allegations to your relationship with Sabrina." He slammed his fist on the counter. "I can't talk about the investigation publicly, Catherine. The lawyers forbid it. And as for Sabrina, I'd just be fueling the tabloid fire. She tried to maintain composure. So you do nothing? His face twisted with exhaustion. Yes, for now. We do nothing. The lawyers say we need to wait until the SEC finishes their inquiry. Then we can mount a defense. Catherine nodded numbly. She felt shut out. Every day the tension in the penthouse grew heavier, as if invisible walls were closing in. And Derek seemed to alternate between frantic action and stony silence, leaving Catherine alone in her swirling thoughts. A few days later, Catherine's father showed up unannounced at the penthouse. Derek had gone to the office. She welcomed Alexander in, offering him tea. He studied her face, concern etched in his expression. You look exhausted, he said. I can't sleep, Catherine admitted. I keep replaying everything in my head. Alexander placed a comforting hand on hers. Come home with me, at least for a while, to clear your head. Give Derek space to sort this out. She hesitated, torn. I don't want to abandon him. Alexander sighed. You wouldn't be abandoning him, dear. But you're pregnant, stressed, and it's not healthy. You need calm surroundings, not SEC investigators and salacious tabloids. Catherine thought of the baby, the life growing inside her. She felt a pang of guilt. She was so consumed by Derek's crisis, she barely paused to consider her own well-being. After a long moment, she nodded. You're right. Let me pack a bag. If Derek wants to talk, he knows how to reach me. Within an hour, she was in her father's car, heading toward the tranquility of Connecticut. She left a short note for Derek. I'm going to Dad's for a few days to rest. I hope you understand. She didn't expect an immediate response, and she got none. Days turned into a week. Catherine settled into a guest suite at her father's estate, where the staff fussed over her, ensuring she had healthy meals and plenty of rest. She felt her body relax bit by bit, though her heart still weighed heavy. She kept an eye on the news. Harrington Ventures seemed to be on the brink. More rumors of a mass investor exodus, talk of a possible resignation by Derek if indicted. Then one afternoon, Catherine received a call from an unexpected source, Amanda Wu, Derek's assistant. Amanda's voice trembled with urgency. Mrs. Harrington, I'm sorry to bother you, but there's something you should know. Catherine gripped the phone. What is it? A man came by the office, Kyle Peterson, one of Derek's old associates. He claimed to have documents that could prove Derek's innocence. But Derek is so busy fighting fires, he barely gave Kyle the time of day. Kyle said he discovered that Sabrina Chen had conspired with another firm to sabotage Harrington Ventures. He said it was personal for her. She wanted to ruin Derek. Something about an old family feud. Catherine's pulse raced. Wait, an old family feud? Sabrina never mentioned anything like that. I don't have details, Amanda said. But Kyle swore he has proof. Sabrina manipulated data to make it look like Derek was trading on insider info, when in fact it was all her doing. He tried emailing Derek, but with the SEC monitor it might get lost. I think Derek's ignoring him because it sounds too far-fetched, but Kyle seems genuine. Catherine thought back to Sabrina's chilling composure, her blackmail attempt. Maybe Sabrina had orchestrated the entire fiasco, setting Derek up for a fall, while reaping her own profit. It was a terrifying thought, but it made sense given her abrupt disappearance and hush money demands. Amanda, can you put me in touch with Kyle directly? Catherine asked. Of course. I'll text you his number. Minutes later, Catherine spoke to Kyle. He explained that Sabrina's father, Wei Chen, once competed with Derek for a major Chinese tech merger. Derek's success had apparently cost Wei Chen a fortune and tarnished his reputation back home. Kyle believed Sabrina sought revenge under the guise of forging a business relationship, planning to entangle Derek in legal trouble. She fed him tips that appeared legitimate, but in reality they were gleaned from corporate espionage or manipulated data. Then she let the SEC discover them. "I have documents showing Sabrina's father orchestrated the entire infiltration," Kyle said, "and also a recorded phone call where Sabrina brags about how easy it was to seduce Derek into compliance." Catherine felt anger and relief swirl together. If Kyle's evidence was real, it could vindicate Derek. "Why didn't you come forward sooner?" He hesitated. "I only discovered it a few days ago, rummaging through old servers and unsubscribed email accounts. I used to manage some side projects with Derek, but we parted ways after a disagreement. I had no idea Sabrina's infiltration ran this deep. I thought I owed it to Derek to come clean now." "Thank you," Catherine said earnestly. "Please get those documents to Derek's lawyers. And also send a copy to me." Catherine returned to the city the very next day. Her father tried to persuade her otherwise, but she insisted. "If these documents can save Derek, I need to be there," she said. At Harrington Ventures, she found Derek hunched over a conference table, scattered with papers, eyes bloodshot. The board was in an uproar. The SEC investigation was intensifying. Media outlets were calling him the next Bernie Madoff. It was chaos. Catherine entered the room and placed her hand on Derek's shoulder. He flinched at first, then turned to see her. A mixture of surprise and relief flashed across his face. "Catherine, you're back." She nodded. "I have news. I spoke to Kyle Peterson." Derek frowned. "Kyle, I haven't seen him in ages." Quickly, Catherine explained what Kyle had told her. She saw Derek's eyes widen, a spark of hope igniting. "If he really has that evidence, we can prove Sabrina was the mastermind. This changes everything." "It does," Catherine agreed. "We need to move fast, though, before Sabrina disappears for good." Derek called an emergency meeting with Langley and the legal team. Kyle arrived with a briefcase full of documents and digital files. He walked them through each piece of evidence, showing how Sabrina had infiltrated Harrington Ventures, forged research reports, and leaked them to Derek under false pretenses. The final damning piece, a recorded phone call, where Sabrina gleefully admitted Derek is so hungry for power, he won't even question where the data comes from. By the time the SEC is done with him, he'll be ruined. Langley's eyes shone with triumph. "This is exactly what we need. With this, we can build a defense that Derek was the victim of fraud. He'll still face questions about his due diligence, but it's a significant shift in liability." Derek looked stunned, as if someone had handed him a life preserver, just as he was drowning. He turned to Catherine, voice thick. "I don't deserve you. I was so reckless. I should have known better." She placed a hand over his. "Let's just get through this." Armed with the new evidence, Derek's lawyers presented everything to the SEC. The response was immediate and dramatic. Francesca Morales grilled them for hours, verifying the documents, analyzing the authenticity of the recordings, and cross-checking them against Sabrina's earlier claims. 2 days later, the SEC issued a statement. They were redirecting the focus of the investigation toward Sabrina Chen and her associates. Derek remained under scrutiny for negligence, but the criminal angle for insider trading was all but dropped. The media pounced on the story of the scheming mistress, fueling a new wave of scandalous headlines. But for Derek, the worst legal nightmares seemed to recede. He wasn't out of the woods. Entirely civil penalties for failing to perform proper diligence could still be on the table, and Harrington Ventures' reputation was badly tarnished. Investors remained wary, but at least the threat of prison no longer loomed. Throughout the madness, Catherine stayed by Derek's side, though their personal relationship remained strained. She had forgiven him enough to fight for his exoneration, but the wound of his betrayal festered. One evening, after a grueling day of damage control, they sat in the living room. Derek poured himself a stiff drink, offered Catherine sparkling water instead. They sipped in silence. "Thank you," he finally said, "for not walking away, for finding Kyle, for everything." She nodded. "I did it for our child, and maybe for the Derek I thought I knew." He winced at that. She continued, "Where do we go from here?" He drained his glass. "I can't pretend this didn't happen. I failed you. I was so blinded by ambition, I forgot the vows we made. And Sabrina." Catherine cut in gently. "Let's not talk about her anymore." She sighed. "I'm not sure what's next for us, but I do know that if we're going to move forward, we need honesty therapy and time." He closed his eyes, a single tear escaping. "I'll do whatever it takes." In the weeks that followed, Derek officially stepped back from the CEO role of Harrington Ventures, appointing a trusted associate to steady the ship while he sorted out the final legal tangles. The board reluctantly agreed, seeing that Derek had become a lightning rod for controversy. Meanwhile, Catherine focused on her impending motherhood. She invited Derek to prenatal appointments, and he came. Their interactions remained cautious, but as they witnessed the ultrasound images and heard the baby's heartbeat, a profound sense of shared responsibility bound them. Then one crisp autumn morning, Catherine went into labor. Derek rushed her to the hospital, eyes wild with worry. Hours later, they welcomed a baby boy, whom they named Andrew Alexander Harrington. Andrew for Derek's late grandfather and Alexander for Catherine's father. Holding their newborn son, Catherine and Derek felt something shift. The swirling chaos of the past months faded, replaced by a fragile hope. They had survived betrayal scandal and near financial ruin, but life had given them this new beginning, a chance to change. Epilogue. Short conclusion. Within the novel. Over the next year, the SEC investigation wrapped up. Derek settled the negligence charge with a hefty fine and strict compliance measures. Harrington Ventures, though, rebounded under new leadership, and Derek devoted himself to philanthropic initiatives while quietly rebuilding trust among colleagues and loved ones. Sabrina Chen never resurfaced in the US, rumored to be hiding out in Hong Kong under her father's protection, though whispers of further legal action haunted her. For Catherine and Derek, the road to healing was long and winding. They attended counseling, learned to communicate more honestly, and above all focused on raising little Andrew in an environment of love and stability. Through tearful confessions and late-night heart-to-hearts, Catherine began to forgive, and Derek sought to become the man she deserved. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, life rarely is. But in the hush of their child's laughter and the quiet strength of renewed commitment, they found the seeds of something real, something worth preserving. And though the headlines had screamed betrayal and scandal, the final pages of their story were yet unwritten, carrying the possibility of redemption and a new kind of happiness. Life can twist and turn in the most unexpected ways. For Derek and Catherine Harrington, What began as a shocking betrayal escalated into a high-stakes legal drama threatening to tear their lives apart. Yet amidst scandal and heartbreak, they discovered a glimmer of resilience and a reminder that even when everything seems lost, hope can emerge from the shadows. In this story, we've witnessed secrets laid bare, ambitions tested, and a love that struggled to survive the storm. Ultimately, it is a testament to the power of truth and the choices we make in the wake of our deepest regrets. If you found yourself enthralled by the twists and turns of Derek and Catherine's journey, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more captivating tales of ambition, betrayal, and redemption. Your support allows us to continue bringing such stories to life, and we can't wait to share the next chapter with you.